Alright guys, let's move on. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a present system for our application. We want to be able to know whether the users are online at a given moment. We want to know whether they're using the app or not. So to do that, what we'll do is we'll come into our application class and we'll create two new variables. The first will be a database reference, UserDB, and on top of that I'll have a private Firebase auth object called auth. Alright, I'll initialize that in our onCreate. So auth is equals to Firebase auth.getInstance, and UserDB is equals to Firebase database dot get instance dot get reference. And now we want to point this to our current user, so we say dot child users and then dot child auth dot get current user dot get UID. So that will point to the particular user that's logged in. Okay, so what will we do with this database reference? First, we're going to add a value event listener, new value event listener, and then within the data snapshot we're going to add another child to our user table, and this will be online, the child online. And after this we're going to use a new method we haven't come across yet, and that's on disconnect. So let's do a little bit of an explanation. Firebase, as I said, works in real time. You're always connected to the database. As long as you have an internet connection and your application is running, the database will always be connected. With this method, we can handle what happens if that connection is broken. So on disconnect is what will happen after that connection gets cut. And we can use this to help us in this case, because we are trying to find out whether a person is online. So if they disconnect, we know for sure that they're not online. And in which case we can say set value. So this will set value to our online child, and we'll set value to false. And then right underneath this, just as a test, UserDB, we're going to get rid of this quite soon. .online .set value, and it will seem like we're undoing what we've done, but we're going to set it to true. So in the first line we set the value to false, and in the second line we immediately set it to true. But on the first line we have the on disconnect first. So this means if we are disconnected, then we'll set it to false. Otherwise it's just going to be true. So let's run this. Before I do that, I'm just going to wrap this in an if statement to make sure the data snapshot, this, is not empty. And then we can do all of that. Alright, so let's run the app. Okay, so the app is running right now. So let's go to our database and see if anything has happened. And indeed something has. So we now have our online child and it says true. But let's see if it'll actually do its work. So I'm going to go to the app and I'm going to kill that process. And as you can see, it changes it to false, which is pretty cool, I think. So let's test one more time. The application starts, the connection is made, and it's set to true. So that's pretty cool, and it's done exactly what we want. It's seeing whether the person is present. We're using the app, therefore online is equals to true. We close the app, online becomes false. But there's a problem. How about if I minimize the app and I go to the home page? Online is still equal to true. Now we don't want this. We don't want for a person to leave the app and perhaps go to Chrome or to their mail and still be thought of as online. They aren't actually using the app in that moment. So let's see how we can go about changing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my main activity and I'm going to create a database reference at the top. So let me create some space first. Private database reference UserDB. We'll initialize it down here, just the same way I did on our Square class. So in fact I can just copy that. Once again, a little bit of space and paste. So UserDB is Firebase database, get instance, get reference. We're pointing it to users and we're pointing it to our currently logged in user. Okay, and now what I can do is I can go into the onStart method and we'll find we have our send to start method, which we use to kick people to the start activity if they are not logged in. Now we can use this with an else statement, and within the else we can simply take this line, the one that sets it to true. We can cut it from here and paste it there. Okay, next what we'll do is we will override our onStop method, and I'll do that just underneath the onStart method. So onStop, and within this I'll paste the same line, userdb.childOnline.setValue, but this time I'll say false. So when the activity stops, for example, if I minimize or if I go to another activity, then it will be set to false. So let's run it. Okay, there's the app running. Let me open my database. And I can see it actually was changing while I was opening it. So let's actually test it. Okay, so it's running. I'm going to minimize. And it changes to false. Excellent. Let me go back to it. Let's do this. Oops, not that. Square, and it goes back to true. And one more test. I'm going to come to my settings activity, which means the main activity stops, and indeed it turns to false. So that has worked wonderfully. We can now tell whether a person is online and also whether they're actually looking at the application, not when they have minimized it and they've gone to another application. So that worked very well. Now, something to note, I've added this logic to the main activity, which means when they're on the main activity, the present functionality will work. We'll know whether they're using the app. But when they switch to the profile activity, it won't work because we haven't added that to its onStart and onStop. So you can go ahead and do that if you'd like. It's the same process. You just override onStart and add this line of code. Where is it? You add this line of code, and then you'll have to override onStop and add the opposite. And yeah, you do that for all the activities where you need to do it. I'm going to just leave it for main activity. You guys can go ahead and do the others if you like, but putting it on main activity is enough for our purposes. So now that we know whether a person is online or not, how can we actually show that to other users? Well, since it's an entry in our database, since it's something that is actually within our user table, we can take that data and we can use it in our application. And where I will use it is in our users list. But we'll save that for our next video.